1. And so just know that we are recording now. Again, you will not be on there. It's just going to be myself and my voice, not your photo or camera or anything like that. Throughout the session, please do feel free to ask your questions. I'll be monitoring the chat, and then you can also unmute yourself and ask a question if you do have it. Even though I do have some kind of slides prepared and some information I want to share, you'll see that I've made this presentation very interactive. So I want to hear the questions you have. I want to hear if you need me to clarify things. I don't want this to just be me talking at y'all for an hour. So please do interact with me as you see fit. So this evening, there's many other tips to kind of being successful on making the grade, right? But this evening, we're going to focus on the 5 tips below. So first is reviewing your syllabus. It is the start of the semester, and so we'll talk about what you should pay attention to as you look at your syllabus from your professors. Next is managing your time. So how should you be managing your time in those pieces? Third is study smart, right? So thinking about the steps in the study cycle that we'll talk about, and then how you can prepare yourself to study for your exams. I know you don't have exams quite yet, but I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's going to come sooner than you know it. Using your resources. So we're going to share some really good resources that are available to you for free at Texas Tech that you can use. And then the last is asking for help. So just kind of a good reminder and the different ways in which you can ask for help and the people that are here to help you. So again, feel free to ask questions as I go through these pieces. But we are going to start by talking about reviewing your syllabus. And actually, I'm going to have you share your kind of, I'm going to have you pull out a syllabus from your courses. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that. And then write down all the parts of the syllabus that are important to note, that you think are important to note. And then I'll be actually sharing my screen on a separate platform, if you will, and allow you to put in the parts that you wrote. So like, let's say you say, to give one example, like the name of the course, right? What are the different parts of the syllabus that you think are important to know? Maybe some of you have already done this, perhaps this past weekend, and that's fine. You can still put those into that form. But if you haven't yet, and maybe we will be able to jog your memory on some other pieces. So go ahead and take some time to pick a syllabus, pick one of your courses, pick one syllabus. Maybe it's a course that you just got a syllabus for. Maybe it's one that maybe you haven't looked at any of your syllabi in too much detail yet. Whichever course, maybe it's your hardest course, your easiest course, and go ahead and do that. And so I'll give you about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to reshare my screen with something else here. So. Okay, so you should see my screen again, but kind of in a different format. And so what I'm going to have you do is sorry, I want to go to a present mode. So give me 1 second to do that. And follow the instructions on there. There you go. You'll see on the top, it says go to menti.com and then use the code 4571013. You can do that on your phone or your browser. And just put in those things that I told you to think about. So what are important things that you know that you pay attention to every time you get a syllabus for one of your courses? As I said, it can be anything like the name of the course, the name of the professor, but get more in depth than that, right? I know there's like 15 pages or 10 pages of your syllabi sometimes. So everything is pretty important, but what are some really important things that you want to pay attention to? So go ahead and put your results in there, and then it will kind of keep calibrating for me in real time, and we can see that. Yep, so important due dates for assignments, of course, and knowing when your midterms and your exams are. There's some other things. Yep, course name, instructor, if there's a teaching assistant, a TA for the course, the breakdown of like, okay, how much is everything worth in the class, what the professor's attendance and absence policies are, all of those things. The meeting time, so when does the class meet? I know this semester with COVID, that looks very different just in terms of like I know many students have told me that they have like hybrid courses or hybrid classes where they're sometimes meeting in person, sometimes not. Again, illness policy, attendance, office hours. Yeah, office hours are really important. It's like, when can you go talk to the professor? How can you contact the professor? Yeah, this is great. And maybe some of you know all of these things. Some of you may have paid into some of those pieces, but I can't stress enough. And I have some slides to kind of show you more. So yes, thank you all for sharing those pieces. So I'm gonna reshare my PowerPoint because you all talked a lot about some of the things that we've gathered here, right? So first and foremost, right, and someone had mentioned this, is the professor's contact information, the format of the class. So as you can see here, this says it's asynchronous. So I know that's probably a somewhat newer term for this school year, right? So asynchronous means it does not meet the same time every or it doesn't meet at a certain time every week. It means that you can watch the lectures for the class as you want to. Now, you should probably set aside a time, a daily or weekly time that you watch those lectures. But this just means that there is no set time for a class. If it's synchronous, it means that yes, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. you must be there via Zoom or in person for the class, right? The format, so this is obviously online. Some of your courses are going to be hybrid, some will be in person. And then someone had already mentioned this as well, but office hours, right? So, and office hours are a time when professors want you to come in, whether it's virtually or in person, to meet and ask them the questions that you have about the class. So please, please, like, if you take away maybe a few things from this event, this workshop, I want one of those things to really be the office hours, and that you should definitely go to office hours. Professors want to see you there. And then if they do have in-person office hours, where is their office and where will those be held, right? These, for this example, they're going to be on Zoom. What textbooks, so this one I didn't see on the poll, but what textbooks are required, right? So that's going to look different. There's no standard, right, for any class, but how can you get them, right? What's the, how many are there? How do you need to purchase them? They'll put all that information under required course materials. And some of you may have to get blue books or index cards or different things too. And then this was mentioned several times. How many exams are there? How many points is each exam? What's the format? In this example, there's going to be 3 exams, including the final, right? So, this also really important to note. It says the first 2 exams are not cumulative. The final exam is cumulative, meaning it covers the entire course. So you want to pay real attention to that. Sometimes I'll be meeting with a student and I'll say, oh, we have an exam. They'll tell me they have an exam, and I'll say, oh, is it cumulative or is it just on a few chapters? And they may not know. So really pay attention to that. Your professor should also tell you closer to the exam what that looks like, but you also want to know how many points. Like, you should be studying for every exam, but if you have to make some decisions or you have many exams in a week, how many points is each exam, and how are you going to kind of allocate how much time to spend on it? So that's really important. How will you be graded? Someone mentioned that, right? So for this class, there's only a few assignments, right? So there's different assignments, weekly discussion posts, it looks like, and then several exams for a total of 500 points. Every faculty member is going to have different grading kind of processes in terms of how many assignments they have. And you already know this, probably some of this as you have different classes, but how many points each exam is, how many points different assignments are. You may have papers. This class doesn't have papers, but so you really want to be aware of that so that you know what to expect, and then how you'll be graded, right? So what is the kind of grading scale? I didn't mention this, I don't think, actually, sorry, but and then someone mentioned this earlier, though, deadline. So when are things due? So every professor will set this up differently, and so apologies for missing that on these slides, but you want to know, okay, my first assignment for this class is due this time. So then how can you plan kind of further out from that, right? So if you have a big paper due in 3 weeks, when are you going to start to kind of write that? So you do want to have a sense of those deadlines. And as after this, at the end of this session, I'll be sending out a handout that actually has you fill out like a semester calendar of like all the different events. And I'll actually show you all that in a moment. But then if I do want to be let y'all know if you have any type of sort of accommodations that you may need to be able to successfully participate in the course, you can meet with Student Disability Services to make special arrangements to get help with that. So if you're on this call and you think that might be you and you're not familiar, please do email me. You know, you can email me or your program kind of leads for the different programs you're a part of, but we do want to make sure that you have the right accommodations you need to successfully participate in the course. So if you're not sure what I mean by that, again, you can also email me. But that is really important to think about, and we want you to be comfortable and be able to learn successfully. So this is actually required for faculty members to have this information in their syllabi. So I put COVID guidelines here, but you know, some of you put things about illness and sickness and you know, what attendance policies are. So we didn't put attendance policies in this class because a lot of it is you know, this is more related to COVID, but attendance policies are kind of in conjunction with COVID. So you do want to be mindful of those. But so with COVID right now, this maybe hopefully, knock on wood, won't be relevant in a semester, but you do want to think about what the COVID policies are. You know, campus-wide, it is that you should not be going to an in-person class then, and that the professor will work with you to make sure that you can get your assignments due you know, in a timely fashion, especially if you're not feeling well, but that is something to pay attention to, especially this semester. So I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions for me as I. And then I'm going to put it into the chat as a file so y'all will be able to access it. So as I mentioned, so if you look into the chat, you should be able to download that handout, and then I'll also send it to everyone. But this is a really great handout. So as I mentioned, what it does is you can see it's front and back or 2 pages, right? So it goes from week 1 to 8, right? And then week 9 through 16. So as you can see, it's very simple, but students really love this tool. So what it does is, as you can see, it's just Monday through Friday, because hopefully most of your kind of assignments and things are going to be due on those days. And so what you can do is, you know, start with last week of the semester, and then the week 2 would be this week, put in the dates, right? So today is the 26th, and so on, 27, 28, 29, and then go through all of your syllabi. So maybe you went through one of your syllabi just now, go through all of your syllabi and put through all of your major deadlines. So as you can see, these boxes are small. And so you're not gonna be able to fit in like, okay, if you have a homework assignment that's due every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's probably not gonna be relevant, but putting in your assignments that are due, your big assignments, your papers, your exams, anything big, and you can decide to do what you want with it. But I think this is really good for big things. So that way you can say, okay, wow, week 5, I have 2 exams. I have an exam in physics and an exam in biology, and I have a paper due for organic chemistry. So how am I going to manage all of those 3 commitments? That means I should probably start thinking about my paper in week 2 or 3, if I can, and then I should start to study in, you know, the end of week 3 so that I can have over a week to study, right? So seeing all the in one page, I cannot stress enough the importance of that, because yes, if you have your own planner or whatever, you can use that too. We'll talk in a moment about different ways to manage your time. But a lot of students like this because it's just on one page. You can print it out front and back. You can print it out just 2 pages. You can recreate your own, whatever you want. But I do find this tool to be really, really helpful in terms of thinking about your semester. So again, I'll reshare this as well via email, but I did want to make sure that we shared that tool with you all. So, So then kind of in conjunction with that semester planning calendar is going to be this piece about just overall managing your time. So how many of you on a scale of 1 to 10 put into the chat how you think you are with managing your time? And be honest, this is all a safe environment, right? No one's going to judge you, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you currently think you are with managing your time? 6? Okay, Dominique. That's good. But maybe could be a little bit stronger, right? What do you think? 8.5. Nice, Pamela. Okay, 8. 6, 6. Okay, 8. So I'm seeing kind of on the high scale, some 6s, some 8s, maybe behind. Thanks for kind of sharing even more, Pete. You're currently behind your research, but you're on top of everything else. Okay, so some of these pieces may be a little bit, familiar to you all, but some of you who are maybe a little bit lower, I hope that some of these pieces on managing your time are helpful, right? So when you think about, and again, this weekly schedule is not for everyone. I'm going to pop that into the chat here and we'll reference it too. But I find this weekly schedule to be really helpful. It's actually from my old job where I used to work in academic success. And again, what I usually would do, and I'm happy to meet with any of you if you want to do this individually, but is using some kind of template like the one I just sent into the chat. And again, I'll send you after this via email, is creating some kind of weekly plan. So y'all have so many commitments. Not only do you have your classes, you have student organizations, you may work on campus, you may have office hours that you want to visit that I said you should visit, study sessions, meals, you work out, you want to socialize. That's not even everything on this slide, right? But so a way to kind of figure that out and keep track of it, because the amount of times that students tell me, oh, I forgot about this, or I forgot, like, especially again with the hybrid classes or things like that, it can be easy. You have a lot to think about. And so it can be easy to forget or miss things, right? So using that weekly schedule template to really start out by using putting your fixed commitments in. So like you must go to class. Some of you may disagree with me, but you must go to class, right? You probably have to go to work if you do have an on or off campus job. Student org meetings, depending on your org, some may be mandatory, some maybe not. Office hours, study sessions are not fully mandatory. I see them as academic commitments, and I think putting them into your schedule as a fixed commitment may help you kind of go to some of these pieces. And I'll talk in a moment about SI and tutoring and things on campus. But then, so start out blocking those out. Like you cannot schedule something when you have your class, right? And I suggest going back to those like asynchronous classes that don't meet at a certain time. I would still like 98% recommend that you dedicate a set day and time to do that class. Maybe you want to do it at 6 p.m. Maybe you want to do it at 6 a.m. Maybe you want to do it at noon. Whatever that works for you, even if you don't have a set time that you have to watch your lecture videos for a class, make that part of your routine. Otherwise, you're going to fall really behind. I've done that. I never had online courses in college, but I took an online class for fun, so like didn't have as much of a requirement, but I couldn't keep myself accountable because I knew it wasn't required, but also because there wasn't a set time that I had to do it. So hold yourself accountable to that routine and that set time for doing those asynchronous classes. But then, of course, your classes that are synchronous, you must go to, right? Then add in your must-dos, right? We may all want to work out, but we may not all do that. Your meals, maybe meal prep. I know a lot of students that, a lot of the students that are peer mentors in first generation programs talk about like planning out their meals, going grocery shopping, but also like actually making their meals. So if you live off campus, it's going to be really important. And if you live on campus too, I know right now there is some time in terms of like ordering and things like that. So think about the things that are priorities for you that may not be those like fixed must do at this time commitments, but you need to do. This isn't even including sleep because you do need sleep. And then take all those empty spaces and block out chunks of your time to do homework and study, right? So I'm going to give y'all some time to do that. Sorry, I don't have it here. Yeah. Sorry, I moved those around, but so use your preferred method of scheduling, and then we'll talk about apps in a moment. So we'll talk about that. And then you'll start out by blocking out your fixed commitments, adding in your must-dos, and then blocking out your study time, right? So we'll talk about apps in a second, but I'm going to give you about 5 minutes or so to do that. And or as you're doing that, ask any questions that you have, right? So if you use like Google Calendar or Outlook, or there's just so many different apps. I mean, I can't even think about them, and we'll share them in a moment. Then please, 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 use that. You don't have to use that handout that I shared with you. You could use a piece of paper, right? There's no requirements. You can use a piece of paper that looks like this. So whatever makes sense for you, I'm going to give y'all about a few minutes to do that. Then we'll talk about different apps that y'all use and share some resources on doing those pieces. So go ahead, and again, feel free to ask any questions that you have as well. Share some apps that you currently use to manage your time and prioritize your commitments. And so I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen, and then y'all can kind of pop in to it how you did before. So here we go. And you should see the instructions again. So just put into menti.com for 571013. I believe it's a similar code to earlier. And let us know what apps you currently use to manage your time and remember commitments, right? Because part of this is like you all have some of this information as you talked about with managing your time. So tell us, y'all are better with apps. I tell my students all the time, like, y'all know apps much more than I do. So share with us what apps that you use that work for you, and maybe you're going to help someone else who's here this evening or someone who's watching this recording, right? Outlook, bullet journal, cool. Apple Calendar, Outlook Calendar. Okay, it's cool that a lot of you use Outlook Calendar. That's just good kind of general information to have, because I know many of you, or many with these events and things like that, we can just invite you that way, right? So I love this person who says I don't use any apps. I only love them. I say I love them because I am such a paper agenda person. If y'all could, if you can see my camera, I use Agenda like it is my job. And for me, it's different because at work, we do use Outlook Calendar. So I have to use that for my schedule. But then I create to-do lists all the time in my planner. So I feel you on that. But it's cool to know, I guess it's good information to have that y'all use Outlook Calendar a decent amount. And that's great because I love it. I even color code my Outlook Calendar. I'm not going to show you because there's probably different things on there that don't make sense to y'all. But you can color code it for each of your classes. The person who talks about bullet journaling, I know you probably would love that and probably do that already. For your work schedule, you can have a different color. And you can get notifications sent to your phone so that you don't forget things too with the Outlook calendar. So I think that's really great with that too. So awesome. So just a quick kind of overview. Here are some additional ones. Many of you mentioned using Outlook Calendar. There's also Google Calendar, but I know we're not a Google school at Tech, so that's it makes sense. But there are some other apps. So if you are looking maybe for a new app, for that person who mentioned there being a bullet journal person, for maybe the person who said, oh, I just prefer to use written, you may not like any of these apps, but there is a really cool app called Wunderlist. And if you can see on here, you actually just create like a whole account, and then you can even create a to-do list on there. You can say here how there's like different categories for like movies you want to watch, groceries, family, maybe right now, I'm sorry, we can't travel, but so as you think about like the different lists you want to create, I'm a big list person. So I think Wunderlist list is a really good app for that. There's also another app called My Study Life. So I kind of provided a really small screenshot there, but definitely if you're looking for additional apps, keep an eye out for those two apps there as well. So And so our next piece is going to be talking about studying well. So we talked about the different exams and things that exist, that you have coming up. And I know hopefully many of you don't have exams quite yet. But what's really important is this kind of study cycle piece, right? And I like to prioritize a study cycle because there are many pieces that you do already do with this, right? You already probably study for your exams in some capacity, but there are things that can help make the study process easier, right? So we're barely starting the second week of class, so you can implement some of these tips and tricks right now, right? So the two of the most important things, steps I think of this study cycle are preview and review, and so I'll talk about both of those, but just know that, right? So as you can see, the study cycle does start with preview, which pretty much suggests and only says you have to spend about 15 minutes in it. And I want y'all to kind of think about trying this. But before class, just skim your textbook, your new material, whatever you're going to be reviewing in class. So, your syllabus might have like, okay, January 27th, we're going to be covering these parts of the textbook or whatever. Some classes are very explicit, like read this before class, some are not, but so just be mindful of like the material or the kind of what you have to read before that class or what chapters you're covering. Just skim. No one says you have to read verbatim, right? Unless it's a class that you do have to actually read to participate in discussion. But for a lot of classes, maybe it's just reviewing that kind of part of the chapter or whatever. So that way, when you go into class, you have a sense of what the professor is going to talk about, right? And I tell so many students this and they don't believe me. And then they try it out for a few weeks and they're like, you were totally right, Trudy. That totally works well because it's just like a movie preview. I always use that example, right? So before you go to a movie, and again, I know right now we don't really go to movies, but there's Netflix and Hulu and, Amazon Prime and all that jazz. And so you may, before a movie or a TV show, you're going to watch the preview for that to say, hey, is this even worth my time? Some of you may launch right into a movie or a TV show, but usually you watch some kind of preview, right? And so Netflix makes it pretty easy because they just automatically play a preview. But so that treat that your classes like that. So again, this is not for those classes where they say, this is an English class and you have to read, 4 chapters and come prepared to discuss it. Then you should probably not really skim. And even then, though, skimming or learning to read quickly is important there. But really, thinking about how you can just skim and be aware of the major concepts in the class before you even get to the class. Then, of course, attending. I know this is not common. This is pretty common sense. Like, yeah, go to class, but is important. Go to your class. Don't skip your classes. And then taking good notes. And so that's kind of a whole nother kind of series that we can talk about. And I'm happy to answer questions on that. But making sure that you're taking good notes. And figuring out what that looks like for each class. Are you typing them? Are you writing them? Does your professor give you an outline? And asking questions if you are confused, right? So that's obvious. Attending is great, right? Then reviewing. So after class, and so I said how important preview was. Review, I think, is equally, if not more important. Reread your notes. You don't have to rewrite them. I knew someone in college who used to rewrite their notes, and I was like, that's not necessary. It's a waste of time. But reread them. If there was something that, let's say right now, I'm talking about the study cycle and you're like, what is she talking about, right? So you may be confused at parts of your class, right? If it's a harder class, you're not understanding what's happening. And so review your notes, see what questions you have. Maybe if there are gaps in your understanding, you can go back to your textbook. That's a good idea to then think about going to your professor's office hours. Like, I'm confused about this. You talked about this in class. Can you explain this in more detail? By reviewing your notes again, though, you're going to have something to go to your office hours with. So sometimes students will say, yeah, I want to go to office hours, but I'm not really sure what I would even talk to my professor about. Well, maybe you can talk to your professor about the questions that you had from the notes from class. So take advantage of that, but I cannot stress enough, don't just ignore your notes and that class between the one class session and the next one. At least review your notes. And if you understood everything, that's great, but it doesn't hurt to get something into your memory more than once, right? That's really important. Then studying, and again, that's a whole piece of like creating a study plan and all of those pieces that's going to be important. And then last but not least, once you take your exams, seeing if your study methods are effective, and as you're studying, seeing if you can teach that material to others. So that study and test piece are kind of ones for maybe later on in the semester as you kind of take your exams and things, but really try it out. You may not believe me, but try out the preview and review. And so go back to those schedules and add preview and review time to your calendars. As you saw, there's only, at the most, you only need to spend 15 minutes. Again, previewing may take longer for some of your classes, but reviewing your notes should only take you 15 or 20 minutes. Now, if you do get stuck on a concept or you need to, figure that out, that's different. But generally reviewing your notes, you don't have to spend, an hour or two on it, but just adding in those chunks. Sometimes students will say, well, I don't know what to do in this half hour or hour between my classes because I don't want to go home. I live off campus, but I don't have anything to do. Well, what you can do is in between those classes is just review your notes again, right? So if you look at something more than once, you're going to be more inclined to remember it. So that's a really good thing to remember. So I'm going to give you another minute or two to just add in a few of those preview and review times. Maybe right after this, you preview for one of your classes tomorrow, but even if you are looking at me like, Trudy's crazy, I'm never going to preview, at least put in some review time, reviewing your notes time into your schedule as well. So I'll give you 2 minutes to briefly, sorry, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so hopefully you actually entertained me and did these pieces, in your, added in some preview or review time to your calendars, however that makes sense for you. And so if you do have an upcoming exam, you're going to want to kind of do even more than that, but that's just for kind of general. But do think about, like, if you have an upcoming exam, I know some professors give them right away because they have a lot of exams. Think about how you might do that differently as well. Any questions about those pieces? Okay. So our fourth tip is to use your resources, right? I cannot stress enough, especially because I work with first generation students, a lot of times, students will say, well, is that free for me? And yes, we have so many resources at Texas Tech that you pay for within your, within your tuition and pieces. And so you do really want to kind of take advantage of those resources. So, there are so many different resources, and I'm just going to touch on a few here that I think are particularly important. So just know that you can use them. Many students last semester, like some who I've talked to this semester, say, I wish I had used more resources last semester. So really put that as something, as I said, add in some of these resources into your normal sort of weekly schedule so that you're kind of more inclined to use them, right? If you say, oh, I may go to the writing center tomorrow, but you don't actually have a plan to go there, you may not end up going. And so kind of figuring out how to make yourself actually use those resources, because they're really amazing and they're free and they can help you out with your courses. So First and foremost, tutoring and academic success resources, right? So by the Learning Center, they do offer different types of tutoring. You can check out their website to get the tutoring schedule. They are doing mostly virtual tutoring this semester, and so you don't even have to leave the comfort of your room or wherever you are. You can just log into a virtual session, and that works. And academic coaching is also happening virtually. So let's say I mentioned something about studying today or time management, and you want some more details. As I said, I'm happy to meet with you, but then you can also go meet with the Learning Center about that, right? The second one is supplemental instruction. If you're not familiar with supplemental instruction, for most of your courses that have supplemental instruction, your professor should have already let you know. It's in a lot of courses that are, again, for offered to many students at Texas Tech, and students generally don't do as well in. So that's a kind of a good reminder. They're weekly peer-led study sessions, right? So they're led by your peers who have taken that course already, done really well in the course, and they create these weekly study sessions. So again, go to their website and see. I'm not going to guarantee that all of your classes have it, but especially for many of your more intro level courses, you may have supplemental instruction. And what they do is whatever's happening in class that week and even like that day, then they'll plan a study session around those topics. So it's really beneficial. It's a great way, going back to the review part of the study cycle, to review your notes and get those pieces kind of in more context for you. So that's great. And then we also have study sessions. So you're here because you're part of one of our divisional programs. And so you should have already received your program calendars that have all the dates for the different study sessions. That's dedicated study time. Again, we're doing that virtually still this semester. But that's going to be held via Zoom, and you'll get information. You can either have a private study room, or you can go to the the Learning Center and get tutoring or a supplemental instruction. And so that's just a dedicated time where you can be into a Zoom room and have some accountability to actually study and do your work, because I know that can be hard as well. So check your program calendars for those dates of the study sessions. And if you have any questions, again, let the people who are kind of who oversee your programs know, and then they can get you that information if for some reason you don't have that. Their library, the Texas Tech Library, also has some really, really great resources, right? So the one of the first resources there is document delivery, and that pretty much means that many of my peer mentors were sharing this with me earlier this semester, is that you can actually, some of you probably have your textbooks already, but let's say you don't need a textbook or some book that you need to read until later in the semester, you can actually request for the library to get it from other libraries in the state, or I think probably even further than that. And then that way you don't have to buy certain textbooks. So definitely think about that. Again, this is going to be on the library's webpage, so definitely check that out. You can also check out different videos and movies and things like that from the library. And actually right now, this semester, I know they've changed those rules so that there's a lot of things that they're actually offering that they're streaming for students to be able to have. Usually your faculty members will take care of that, but you can check out videos and things, but then you can also check out like record cameras and video cameras and things like that. Now right now I think that's a little bit different with COVID, so you may have to check in with the library, but that is a really good resource that they have when things are kind of a little bit less when things are you don't have to worry about the safety piece, right? And then you, in each of your colleges and schools, so like College of Arts and Sciences, engineering, there are librarians that are dedicated specifically to your subject, right? So I've seen in Tech Announce recently, the librarian for College of Arts and Sciences has been saying, hey, come meet me. I'd love to meet with you and share information. I think she's been doing information sessions. I'm not sure 100%, but so you have a dedicated librarian. So that librarian can help you find books and articles and things that you may need to write your research papers, or whatnot. So take advantage of that help with your research. These librarians are also, versed in that subject. And so they'll know how to use, because I know I was a psychology major, so there were certain databases I used. But then my friends who were in business or history or English or whatever had different databases. So these librarians can help you. So use the library for that research assistance, especially if you're having trouble, especially if it's one of the very first times writing a research paper. I know your professor and your faculty members are going to be there, but the librarians can also be there for that assistance and help. So. Other resources, just I guess kind of a catch-all that exists on campus. We talked a little bit about student disability services already. So definitely if you think you may need some accommodations for your courses, that's a really good resource to use. The Writing Center will actually help you both personally and with your academic papers. They will actually review those for you and kind of help you. And so you can set up an appointment. You can set up times to meet with them. I believe, and I can double check, they are doing that fully virtually still. And so just check their website for more information, but definitely use them. Of course, it means you have to have your paper done a little bit early, but that's always a good sign or kind of a good lesson to have. But definitely the Writing Center. And then using your network. So y'all have a lot of technology and things like that. I know it's a little bit different with COVID this semester, and so you're not getting to see students the same way you do in your usual classes, but definitely use a different technology you have, use your friends of friends. If you do need help in a class or have some questions, there are others on campus who can help you out. I know some of you create group meets for your classes, so maybe using those, finding study partners for that. When you think about studying, you may want to kind of rehash the information from your class, and maybe your friends are in different majors. So use your network to get some resources and get some help in your classes as well. And then our last tip, which is kind of it's almost a catch-all that I think encapsulates everything that I've talked about in the past 50 minutes or so, is to ask for help, right? So we want to help you, and I use the sort of full we as in I do, right? Like me, Shruti, I want to help you. I can't help you with your academics, but I can point you in the right directions into your resources. But your professors want to help you. The Writing Center, the Learning Center, Supplemental Instruction, SOAR, all these spaces, student disability services, they want to help you. So use those resources that we just discussed. Also, many of you are in different types of programs. So ask your mentor, your peer mentor, your tutor, whoever in your programs that you had that you were assigned to, ask them. Again, these people may not be able to directly help you. If you're in TRIO Student Support Services, you do have tutors, so they may be able to, but maybe it's just about managing your time, right? And maybe your peer mentor can help share some strategies and resources for that. So you are not, everyone here, and I say here as in like that have on the screen in front of you, is here and works on a college campus because we want to help you. So if you take away, as I mentioned, anything, use your professor's office hours, use us as resources, use your resources on campus in general, because they exist for you. And we want you to take full advantage of them, right? So I cannot stress enough how important it is to use your resources and take advantage of them. So that is my last tip for you. I want to see what questions you have, and then I'll have you fill out the survey as well.